Okay, live stream should be switched over. If you are on the chat and want to let me know that you can hear us, that'd be great. Okay, here we are, call 58. This is the agenda. And we'll start with client updates, then we'll talk about upgrade 1, hard fork 1, the unnamed thing that hopefully we can name soon. Then talk about the fate of Pyramont and or a new testnet, and then go into research updates, spec discussion, and some closing remarks. So let's go ahead and get started with client updates. We can start with Prism today.
Hey guys, Terrence here. So for the last 2 weeks, the biggest breakthrough that we made is that we made significant improvements to the slashing protection lookup time. Raul actually wrote a pretty good blog post about that. I posted to the chat. You guys can take a look at that. Other than that, we updated the Go Ethereum dependency. So this no longer allows Prism to have IPv4 addresses in IPv6 map addresses for discovery packages. We also implemented more E2 API methods so that we're almost done there. We started hard fork 1 planning, so that's very exciting. And other than that, we made some minor logging and code improvements. And that's it from us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Terrence. And go with Teku.
Hi everyone, this is Jem from Teku. I hope you can hear me all right.
Yep.
We've been migrating static constants and spec-related logic into our new version spec package as a prep for the upcoming hard fork. We've been testing out LevelDB as a replacement for RocksDB because we had memory growth issues with RocksDB. One of our mainnet boot node ENRs changed. It's been updated in the Eth2 clients repo. We added the ability to add additional validators without restarting Teku, and we've halved the time required to load validator keys at startup. That's about it from our end.
Cool. Thank you, Jim. Nimbus. Oh no. We could hear you before the call started, Mommy, and now we can't. Okay, moving on. Lighthouse.
Hey everyone. So I guess over the last 2 weeks, the main points are that we've added support for queuing and processing blocks, which arrive early. So we can, we were previously kind of ignoring or having issues processing them. So we queue them up and process them on time. We realized that the slashing protection database was kind of growing quite large. So we've added pruning to that. We prune every 512 epochs now. We've pushed 3 releases, which include faster gossip sub verification times and a number of different bug fixes. And we're still analyzing the cause of attestations with incorrect head votes, which seems to be happening across all different kinds of clients. It's clear that it's due to blocks being propagated late, but the exact cause we still haven't quite figured out. So we're going to continue researching that. And we've released a development update recently, blog post. That's pretty much it from us.
Great. Thank you. Mami, do you want to give your audio a try? No dice. Let's go on to Lodestar for now.
Hello. Past few weeks, we've been adding all the tentative hard fork 1 configuration and SSD types, along with just the prototypical phase 1 types, getting everything refactored to allow for separate kind of namespaced variables. We've also been working on prototyping multi-proof support and attaching that to SSD or SSD library. And both of those should be landed in our next release. We're going to release on Monday, this upcoming Monday.
Great. Looks like Zahiri just joined us. Do one of y'all want to give us an Nimbus update? Audio fail. Let's see. Okay. We're going to move on for now. Yeah, Mommy, let me know if we should move on in chat, but I think we're going to move on for now. And if we fix audio, we can fix audio. Okay. So yesterday evening, great, Mommy shared a release with some notes. I'll share it in the chat. Perfect. I wrote down the very, very high-level things that need to happen with Hard Fork 1, which I guess one of the things that I didn't listen there is to name it, and we'll talk about that right after. We are still scrambling to get a pre-release done. The pre-release, we want at least all of the consensus items in place, and there's still some ongoing work there. That initial pre-release, so that test vectors can be worked on iteratively. Proto's done a little bit of work on doing some fork choice work in Serenity, so we have a little bit of kind of feedback loop there. But pretty much high-level items are get these consensus pre-release and vectors out, iterate on pre-releases there if necessary based on client team feedback, and then do what we call a full pre-release, which has all of the networking and validator specs filled in, which are being worked on in tandem right now, so that might not be a disjoint process. At that point, things are done enough that people can work on test nets. Iterative there if there's additional feedback. Then from there, kind of like we did on mainnet launch, I expect private kind of transient single client test nets, likely testing just hard fork 1 features from Genesis, and then testing forking the net partially through at some fork epoch. Then we will begin collaborating with each other, doing some private transient multi-client test nets, doing the same sequence of events, testing both the features in isolation and testing through a forking mechanism at an epoch. Those we might spin one out to be public or semi-public, but Piermont or whatever is Piermont will serve as our public testnet. And so after we've gone through all of those, after we've done a number of iterative pre-releases as necessary, we'll do a mainnet release, that will include a forked epoch chosen for Piermont and mainnet, and we'll yell at everyone to update their nodes. No big surprises in this list. I just wanted to write it down, and we will iterate and expand on it if it behooves us to add more detail there. And I might toss that into like Eth2.0 PM. Behind that, there's a link to a lot of ongoing work that many people on my team are working on, and some of you have contributed to, which is working on getting last features written and tested, and a number of other things like fork tests, actually like fork epoch tests, as well as fork choice tests, which Xiaowei is working on. So there's a lot of activity there. I thought we would be at a pre-release by about today, and we are not. And I apologize, but we're on it. Any thoughts or questions on any of that? Okay.
Have you got any updates, Danny, on what timing you might have in mind? We've said kind of mid-year. Is that kind of firming up, or what's the latest?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm hesitant to put like I think the target would be June, mid-year, but I don't want to put an exact, obviously, date on it until we get pre-releases out and engineering beginning to be in the works. And all that said, I want y'all to make the decision. So based off of the work as it comes in, and your understanding of the work at hand, we can make a decision there. There is a let's see, there's a ETH1 fork in April, and there's an ETH1 fork that will happen very likely by the end of July due to the difficulty bomb. So it's probably best if we don't do it right at the same time and staggered a bit, but and it's also best if we have this process done by the time London is done in July, so that we can put the pedal to the metal on some collaborative work after. So that's kind of the thinking there.
Cool. That sounds good as a planning goal. So that just helps to plan. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay. Anything else on that? I know that we are the biggest bottleneck right now, and we're putting a lot of work in. So we will unblock soon.
I think one maybe interesting thing to think about for hard fork 1 is to use that as a cutoff date for when we have to support syncing not from Genesis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, because I think clients now, if you look at 1.0, like even if clients were to release, even if all clients fully supported not syncing from Genesis state starting today, right? We kind of still have to support all the 1.0 clients that were released previously and not force them to upgrade.
Right, so that's a good point to kind of change some of the networking assumptions.
So I mean, hard fork 1 is a good spot to change those assumptions because everybody has to update at that point.
Yeah, I very much agree. And maybe we should spend a little bit of time pondering if there's any other coordination points that are good to slip in there. For example, not that there's anything to do, but like if we were to rename a field in the ENR or something like that, this would also be a good point, a good place to do it because it's a good coordination point. Okay, yeah, I'll keep that in mind as I'm thinking about some of the other things going on here, and if anyone has some other things that we've been talking about are like nice to do and aren't necessarily part of a hard fork, but would be nice to coordinate on, let me know if you think about anything there. Okay, I'd like to. Is Paul Honor here? No. There's one thing that I do want to talk about, and this, actually, we can talk about this in spec. Let's talk about naming while Patricio is here. Xiaowei, can you give us the context on progress in naming and also introduce our friend Patricio?
Yes, hi. So about the naming thing of the future major upgrades, as known as the hard forks, 2 weeks ago, I opened an issue to collect ideas. And thanks to all the proposals and the MLG gave us, we've got like 42 proposals. So here's the summary of all candidates. And from this, the primary emoji signals, we can see that the Eth2 developers love the star name things. It's proposed by our community friend, Eth2.0, and it got like over 20 positive emojis, while the second place got like 7 emojis. So I assume that the Eth2 feels like it a lot because the emojis are on our Eth2 PM repository. And in the meanwhile, our Staker community friend, Patricio, he's here, and he's also from the POP, the Proof of Attendance protocol, offers to help us on the naming thing vote on pop.vote. So I invite Patricia here to give us a short intro to their solution. And after that, I hope we can discuss or even decide if we want to have a community election on pop.vote or go with the start and things. So even if we don't use pop.vote this time, it could be useful in the future anyway. Yeah, so any question before I hand over to Patricio?
Oh, thank you, Xiaowei.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your attention. So I'm Patricio. I help facilitate the events and activities of the Eth2 community. We've been growing this community for many months now, and it's been going very well. We are very happy to be this sort of bridge between the actual development and the stakers and the enthusiast community, and to make the community feel closer to the research and to the implementations. We do some activities like when we issued the NFT that proved that someone was part of the Eth2 Genesis blog and some others. And using these tools, mainly from POA, but there are many others, we have the ability to do these new kind of polling things and other collaborative mechanics that weren't possible before. So when we saw the naming issue on GitHub, we thought that this was a perfect match, not particularly for the naming thing, because I don't think the naming is important. I don't think anyone is too concerned about the naming thing, but it's a nice opportunity to test out this concept that we have available that could very much help decentralized governance, creating this super low cost, non-binding results for community questions. So what we proposed, and I'm going to put on the chat a little link that answers a couple questions. What we proposed is polling the people running validators. It's a data set of approximately 2,000 people, Genesis validators. We could do with those that were a bit later, but for now, Genesis seems to be the lowest hanging fruit. So the idea is that using this data set of 2,000 NFTs, we could allow people to express their opinion on matters, in this case, a naming, but it could be anywhere. And the thing is very low effort because it doesn't use gas, it uses off-chain signatures. The interface doesn't require any technical ability. It's all a front-end app that people use with MetaMask or with their mobile wallets or whatever they use. It's been tried before. It has worked. It's somewhat civil resistant, which is the main challenge, the core value proposition of this product POAP vote, which I forgot to link, so I'm going to link on the chat as well. The core value proposition is that you can have this super low effort polling system with a somewhat reliable civil resistant guarantees, because it's highly unlikely that someone can attack the vote by creating clones, because you had to put $50,000 worth of dollars on Ether, on nowadays numbers. And even if you attack the vote, like by splitting your validators or doing something somewhat malicious like that, you can't still really get an outsized weight on the vote, because it's still a lot of people. And from what we've seen based on on-chain activity, not many people apparently have distributed their votes. So we believe that this is a very nice tool to use, maybe not for the naming, although something that nobody seems to have mentioned, because there's little overlap between research development and dApp development. But the Synthetics project, which is like a top 3 DeFi project around, has been using the exact same naming convention, like brightest stars or something, for like 2 years now, and they have used lots of times, so there would be overlap. I understand that it's not really a main concern, because it's a DeFi dApp and this is Ethereum 2. But still, what I would propose, and this is free of anyone's responsibility, we would do this inside its staker without requiring anyone to do anything besides voting and maybe helping with promoting the vote. What we would propose is to do this POAP poll, let the people express their opinion in this non-binding manner. And if we see that there's an overwhelming interest on a different naming convention, maybe we consider, or maybe they validate this what that was already proposed, or we find something else. On top of that, if there's anything that feels contentious or looks like it might be useful to get community input on, we are very happy to help facilitating this and running this thing. We are planning on making the product much better, so voting gets easier and running polls it's easier, and we keep working on this tooling for decentralized communities. It can be argued that one of the reasons why some protocol development, not necessarily base layer, but some other protocols, one of the reasons why they aren't more decentralized, it's because it's quite hard to get community input in a reliable manner. So I think that's the main concepts I wanted to share. I very much appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to see how we could collaborate, whether it's with the naming convention or on anything else in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Patricio. And I will say, if there's a sentiment to just go with star names, another thing that we could potentially do is, because they're planning on being in alphabetical order, the first one would be A. We could vote on which A star to do, if there's an overwhelming sentiment of this group to already want to go with stars, which might be a good compromise. Does anybody have strong feelings? They're excited, they're not, either way. You can let Xiaowei know offline if you don't want to express that opinion here. And I'd say probably in the next 24 hours, we're going to make a call on this one way or the other, because we need to get a name out. But I will let it open for discussion if anybody wants to chime in. And also, if people have questions for Patricio about POAP vote, intuition on distribution of POAPs, all that kind of stuff, by all means.
Yeah, one last comment. I guess we can make a 24-hour lasting poll to see which kind of attention we get, because also if people don't bother to vote with their NFTs, then this is pointless. So unless anyone has any concern, and it's permissionless, so it's not that we could stop anyone doing this, but we may run a poll just to confirm that all people are happy with stars. Maybe even instead of offering people options, we just say, are people happy using this convention? And if we get overwhelming support, then I guess there's something to discuss. And then we can do the one, like which one starting with an A you want. I guess nobody will oppose this.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, one thing quickly, I'd like to voice opinion against the idea of voting for every name, because I worry it sets precedent that we're going to have to vote for every hard fork name from here on. And I worry that sort of encumbers us or slows us down for something I think we could just resolve on GitHub or in different bands. So I'm not commenting on the idea of voting for stars or whatever the overall system is, but just specifically against namings.
Gotcha. I mean, there's also the what was it, Petersburg? Every once in a while there's a fork where you have to name very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Patricio, why don't you do some sort of community sentiment poll, and we can kind of go from there. And I would assume, based off of the silence, and that's quite an assumption, that people are kind of okay with stars here. I think some of the other names, Chawei brings up a good point about World of Warcraft zones, likely illegal. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. But yeah, cool. But yeah, if you want to do some sort of community sentiment poll in the next 24 hours, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's a plan. And I think Carl's point makes sense too. We weren't thinking of making this like a super costly. Right. The main point of this is making it easier and cheaper. So yeah, we wouldn't put anything cumbersome. We start with that and see how it goes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Patricio, for that and all the e-staker work that you do. Okay, anything else on naming before we move on? Okay. So Piermont load, the number of validators on Piermont, I believe mainnet is catching up with it relatively quickly. And if Piermont does not have a relatively full queue from here on out, at least for the next chunk of time, as long as the mainnet queue is full, then mainnet will exceed the load of Piermont, and we will lose. We won't have like a nice testing zone for load testing before we hit certain load thresholds on mainnet with respect to validator set size. So there's both Proto and Preston brought this up in different contexts, that it's probably time to either grow Piermont or start fresh with something new, different testnet. The problem with growing Piermont is, yes, we could toss 50,000 validators in the queue, but then we've degraded quality of service for users to test things, to actually get validators on Piermont. So if we were to grow Piermont, we needed to do it in a little bit more nuanced fashion, as in keep the queue relatively full on a daily basis, but not overly full, so that users that show up, have 1 or 2 day delay to get in. This can probably be scripted up relatively easily, and those keys shared amongst people, but then there's just kind of an ongoing maintenance and management to ensure that teams have these keys running and deposits are made. The alternative, and this is not mutually exclusive, we could do both, is to start another testnet where we run most of the validators and start at a higher number, start at 200,000, start at 250,000. That has a little bit maybe less guarantee of quality of service, keep Piermont going as is. So I don't feel very strongly. I'd like some kind of engineering input, because each of these paths would have different amounts of overhead. I think that the problem is a problem. I think we do need to have a higher load testnet with respect to validator count than mainnet. But that's about all I have. So does anyone, Preston and Proto, you were the ones that originally brought this to my attention. Do either of you have any comments, or anyone else?
Yes. I think we're already kind of past the point where growing per month is like really effective, because we cannot grow it faster than mainnet at this point. The churn rate is the same, so you end up adding a maximum amount of validators. Will only ever be 10 or 20,000 validators, whatever is the current difference, bigger than mainnet, which is not like a nice margin to do testing, releases, and all that when an actual problem occurs. So I'm kind of in favor of a new testnet or some alternative to get a lot more validators in.
Right, and an alternative would be to do some sort of fork, but that would require a lot more coordination and higher chance of failure. Or forking, I guess, forking the Q constant and maybe some of the other constants.
Hey, Preston here. I think that we should seriously consider a second testnet with a much larger scale, so that we have a large lead time on mainnet. Because if we, as you said, if we maxing out the queue now in Piermont, we're only 15,000-20,000 validators ahead of mainnet, if even that much. So it'd be nice to have many months of lead time on the validator side, so we can work out those bottlenecks before they become a real issue. And at Prismatic, we would be happy to implement something where we send deposits on a frequent basis, but never exceeding the queue size 50%. So that way, if somebody wanted to join, the quality of service of Piermont would not be too degraded. You would only wait 12 hours at most to get processed through the queue, instead of dumping like all 50,000 at once. We would be fine with implementing something to keep Piermont going, at least to stay ahead of mainnet.
Yeah, because another goal is, even if Piermont's not way ahead of mainnet, it should be at least at parity for people testing their setups. Okay, I'm convinced. Who wants to take the lead on setting up a new testnet? I can knock on Afree's door to see if he has interest there. He can do probably some of the work, but ultimately there will be some work on client team's hands.
I mean, I would just mention that Eth2 deposits are kind of slowing down.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, though, it is still likely that in the 12-24 month time horizon that we do get to pretty substantial validator counts. But yeah, I think that, what is the queue, 3 days long now?
So my estimate is that Coinbase will add roughly 1 million ETH.
Where do you get that estimate?
Basically, just by looking at the amount of ETH under custody in the cold wallet of Coinbase and comparing that to other exchanges like Kraken, and looking at the proportion of ETH.
Well, I think we shouldn't. I mean, I think that it could be very different than what you expect. Basically.
It could be.
Yeah.
So Kraken does not support trading, I think, the staked ETH, and I think Coinbase might, from what I've read.
Kraken does support, I believe.
Didn't look like me from the home.
I would imagine an exchange would by default, but I haven't gone and looked at their product offering.
Well, because they said, when I looked at it, it sounded like your ETH is locked up when you stake on Kraken. They made specific reference that it might take several years until it becomes available again.
Interesting. Yeah, so you would say maybe there's even a higher number coming.
I think it just depends. I think this extrapolation is very, very, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So I just checked. They do have a new token, which they actually have two new tokens, one called Eth2 and one called Eth2.s. The .s is the one that's staking, from understand, the one without the .s is kind of unstaked. And both are derivative and tradable. But you're right.
Unstaked isn't exited?
Yes, that would be my assumption.
It's got a pretty great discount. Micah, to answer your question, it seems like ETH that is entered and exited, and I don't know why there's much of a market for that.
I mean, unstaked ETH might be, for example, any ETH that you have on top of the 32, kind of the
trading of rewards.
But also when you exit, yeah.
Yeah, I could see the trading of rewards. That's
well, okay, you can simply see it as like, I mean, you can basically create a basket of two different kinds of asset. Like with the unstaked ETH, you basically don't take the staking risk, but you also don't get the rewards, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So even if the ETH is staked, you can still create a separate asset that simply counts as the nominal balance of one.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if that's what they're doing. Just it doesn't have to be like
exited
there's a
number of paths there.
There's no reason to make it exit ETH easily.
Yeah. Okay. That aside, so that's what, 30,000 validators if they do 1 million ETH, 100,000 validators if they do 3 million. I agree the queue is slowing down, but I think that it's probably valuable getting ahead of it and having a testnet with at least 200,000 or 250,000. Micah, why do we care about that the queue is slow? On a testnet, if you're trying to get in and test your setup and we put in, you know, a month worth of validators into the queue, and the queue on mainnet is 2 days, somebody might forego adequate testing on the testnet and just jump into mainnet because they don't want to wait a month. So it's probably good to at least have the queue not be too much longer than on mainnet.
Sorry, so Coinbase though is going to be, the stuff we're talking about though is mainnet, right?
Sure, sorry, mainnet we're talking about, there's two different things. We're talking about queue lengths with respect to testnets and quality of service on people being able to kind of test their setup. And then we're also talking about the fact that the number of although the queue length has slowed down on mainnet, meaning the validator set is not growing as much as it was originally, there is a large exchange that is about to offer a new product, which could all of a sudden make queue times go up a lot. Meaning, and the queue times we don't care about. The validator set might start growing largely again because of that product offering from Coinbase.
Okay.
And the having Piermont grow by 100,000 validators might not be necessary today if the amount that mainnet is growing is much smaller today, but that might be disrupted by Coinbase. Okay. I still think we should do a second testnet. Let's organize outside the call. Who wants to name it? Just joking. Okay.
How good is
what was that?
How good is the tooling around people setting up their own private testnets? Like, is it something like a one-click turnkey deploy, like where I can just set up a 3-node testnet for myself, or is it something that's currently
more sophisticated?
Double grease.
What's the current status of scripts here? Do they work? Are they broken?
I have to ask that.
Yeah, I know.
So it's a lot more complicated than I'd like it to be, especially when you're talking about multiple clients, maybe a custom genesis. It will not be like the normal process. If you want to start something with 200,000 validators, like doing it once for the per month testnet was already a big thing, making that many transactions to have it be the same contract. But like for a new testnet, I think we should just kickstart with like a state filled with the validators we need. So that will be different.
Right.
And then likely we want it to be integrated in clients from the get-go to really make it easy for people to actually run nodes. Clients do support custom configuration that is doable and scriptable. Yeah, I do think we need to, like, for the real thing, we need to revisit some things to really make it work.
The reason I was asking just because to address the problem of encouraging people to test first, there's two options. One, a public testnet people can join, and two, make it very, very easy for people to create their own testnets. I was curious how far away the second one is. It sounds like far enough away it's probably worth creating a second testnet public one.
Yeah, I think so. You're also not going to be able to run a realistic 200,000 validator testnet on your local computer. Although some more sophisticated players, i.e. Coinbase, might want to run such testnets. Okay, let's move on. Research updates. I don't know if y'all saw, there was a stateless call in which Donker and Vitalik talked in more depth about Verkle trees, which is pretty cool. Not immediately relevant to our work, but impacting potentially how state trees are constructed in ETH1 and the application layer. Check that out. I don't know if the video is public, but if you want to check out the video, I have a link. Any other research updates?
I have like the update on the merge side.
Great.
Yeah, so there is the document. Let me put it on the chat. This is actually the Beacon Chain spec, updated Beacon Chain spec, including the executable Beacon Chain proposal. So the goal is to start moving this document to the Eth2 spec repository at the end of the next week. So for those who are interested in doing some review and passes on it, you're very welcome, and just leave the comments in this document. So a few words about updates with regard to what was announced during the R&D workshop, because this doc already has been published before. One of the updates is that it became independent from the Eth1, Eth2 communication protocol. Those functions that produces the execution part of the beacon block and inserts it into the application layer chain are abstracted. So, also this spec tries this version tries to address the confusion of the terms of Eth1 and Eth2 terms in the context of the merge, because there is no Eth1 and Eth2 around the merge in one setup. When we speak about Eth1, we mean the application layer, application network, and application state. And when we speak about the Eth2, we mean the consensus or the beacon chain stuff. So I also encourage people to start using this kind of terms, like the consensus layer and the application layer. The idea behind starting to move it to the specs repository is to make it They make it executable and publish some basic test vectors so people will be able to start to implement it. So, yep, and continue to work on some other specs like more probably that touch the application layer, the chain history, and state downloading and other stuff. So, any questions, comments on that? Reach me out.
Great, Mikhail. So yeah, that document shared is going to make its way into spec repo, maybe towards the end of next week, or at least work will begin on that. If you have some fundamental things to discuss or any iterative work on that in the next week, let us know. Otherwise, it'll kind of enter into the normal PR issue development, and you can chime in there. Any other questions from Mikhail or on the merge in general? I just looked at the Paramount Block Explorer. I had it up on my computer, and I looked at it, and I saw there was 83% participation, and I thought that 15% of mainnet validators dropped off, but that was not the case. Anyway, my heart skipped a beat. Any other research updates?
Aside from Virgo trees, I also have that post up on ETH Research about a proposal for how state expiry could work and have fewer resurrection conflict issues than the existing proposals. So feel free to check that out as well.
Yeah, small questions regarding the Virgo trees. As I understand, we will either have them within the merge or after, right? Not before.
I don't know. I mean, there's definitely people in favor of doing whatever needs to be done before.
Right. I mean, for one, there's still probably some debate and technical vetting on them in general, but it probably just depends on relative progress. If the merge is ready and Virtual trees aren't, then probably just do the merge. But if they're kind of competing for both being ready at the same time, then we'll figure out what to prioritize. But I don't know. We probably wouldn't do them simultaneously. I could be convinced otherwise, but it's probably not a prudent decision to do both of those large things at the same time.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, then like the other question, which is probably more correct one, what is the intuition behind the timeline of the Oracle trees? Like the 6 months, year, or whatever.
I mean, I think purely from the cryptographic engineering, like they can be implemented in a few months, but it's all the stuff around them that needs to happen that like lets me think we're talking about more than 12 months, as in do it after the merge.
Right,
it could be soon after the merge.
Because it is very systemic to how clients work and are structured today, the state tree structure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's also stuff like getting transaction witnesses, figuring out how to sync and stuff like that. Like, I mean, that's.
Well, you can do the Virtual tree merge without going to stateless.
Yes, so that's an option. I agree. So that can probably be done quite a bit sooner if we wanted to do that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you? I mean, we're past the
like
research phase.
Use them as we are doing like the Hexery trees now, and update them, but not bother with the witnesses. Then that's doable.
More feasible. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Any other questions on Virtual trees? Okay. Other research updates, other questions about research? I know there's between Kate commitments and Verkle trees and the merge, there's a lot of relatively new and interesting things going on. Okay, we will move on. Spec discussion. Something that I did, and I'll take this offline. I'd request. There's this PR by Vitalik that does. It changes it such that when there are empty epoch transitions, which is a potential DOS vector today, the primary load on empty epoch transitions only happens every 64 epochs, and so it reduces the load by a factor of 64. It also does a per validator leak tracking, so that something that we saw on testnets a number of times was you have a leak that is happening. You get back to that finality point, and all of a sudden the leak tracking is done, and if you start leaking 2 epochs from now, you're kind of started over in terms of the magnitude of the leak. And so there's a per validator leak tracking there too. Justin has also done a bunch of work to clean that up. I'm working on reviewing his PR to that PR to merge things in. I did get some review from Terrence, got a general thumbs up there, and I got a little bit of review from Paul, and he said he's going to dig deeper, and he was not as interested in this feature and thought the complexity was not worth it. So I would encourage, so that's 2 teams. If a member from a couple other teams can take a look at this thing, this is one of the last features and last bits of work that we're doing on consensus side for Hard Fork 1. So I would ask for you to take a look and weigh in on this. I gave Paul a little bit more context on why the PR exists, and he's going to dig a little bit deeper. So there is a PR by Vitalik. I'm working on this merge from Justin. Hopefully we can get that done today, and we'll have kind of the cleanest PR to look at. So I'll drop a link to y'all when I get that done, and I ask you again for a little bit of feedback.
Is that 2192, Danny? Penalties, actives, and exits only at 64 epoch boundary.
Yes, and then the cleanup one is something at Justin Drake, which is one of the more recent ones.
2212.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry, I didn't have the links up.
Right, got it.
Great, yeah. So I mean, the core of what is happening is in that in terms of in 2192, the features are there. So if you want to think about the features, there's without 2212, that's also useful. Okay, any other things to talk about on spec side? Like I said, myself and many other people on our team are spending a lot of time on this. We're not where we wanted to be on the pre-release yet, but we're getting there soon. Okay. And anything else anyone wanted to discuss today? Open discussion, closing remarks. Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you very soon. Thank you, Patricia, for joining us. Eager to see how the community poll goes in the next day or so. And we'll have another call in 2 weeks. Otherwise, talk to you soon on the internet. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks all.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.